What's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we'll be talking about the Bitcoin price chart, along with the XRP price chart and the altcoin market, as we've seen some pops happen throughout the weekend, including things like Monero, which have taken out the January and February highs. I think that's our first one to do it. Now, of course, there's a little bit of a controversial narrative to go along with that, which we'll revisit a little bit later. But otherwise, as we kick off a new week before the stock market opens today, Bitcoin sits at $95,500, still continuing along the wall of worry into the retracements here. Things just still remaining quite stable here in the market as XRP hits as high as $2.36, currently sitting at $2.32 as I'm recording right now. As we talked about last week, some of the optimistic things in there, of course, is that we have already seen the leader SUI get moving. And this is the suspicion that we would be seeing and why we focused on this chart so much over the last couple of months. And sure enough, we've seen quite an aggressive move happen in here, getting all the way back up to almost a 702 retracement already. So for there to be some type of wave 5 to come out of this for the market, it looks like we're on pace already. Kind of that messaging reiterated last week. There's probably going to be a lot of corrections along the way, 20 to 30% ricochets that happen in there. They can just be just kind of like that. And just kind of violent pullbacks, and then we just keep on marching forward. We just haven't seen any of them yet, and the price has moved up very drastic, but it's pretty common that we do see those types of things. So just kind of having to keep that in mind as we continue this climb happening in here for Bitcoin and for the crypto market, that there definitely can be a lot of chop that takes place throughout here, and we're just not really out of the woods of that yet. You know, the goal, of course, is just eventually get to this ABC correction happening in here. If we can get something very clear to come from Bitcoin to then eventually hopefully see the Bitcoin dominance just completely tank on itself throughout here as we get kind of one more big parabola to come out of the crypto market and we see everything kind of catch its big bid, or kind of the thing that everybody comes here for, the big blow off move to happen in the market where we typically see extreme price appreciation, right? That's why we're all here. There's not too much to say about the XRP price chart outside of course, we're in the 230s. We haven't been in the 230s since back in March, but it's still kind of the same concept, looking for prices to get back up into the retracement levels up here between, $2.80 to $3. And thoughts are that we're probably going to see some correcting happen here in XRP as well, but we're just kind of moving right on pace as we should be over here for Bitcoin. So things are still looking okay. This is, of course, the primary wants and desires to see in the market so that it's a really clear read. The thing is, of course, just kind of keeping in mind of if there's going to be any types of surprises. This is totally common corrective behavior we've seen in Bitcoin over the last 5 years. While this is an ideal, easy to read scenario happening in here, and just going to kind of stick with it until it's not. There are variances that can happen in here. We highlighted these multiple times last week, and to just be mindful of them. However, typically when these things happen, we typically don't get above the 50% retracement and close above it, nor do we end up getting all the way up to the 618 retracement, unless if we're already really into our March. So for us to get this high, it's probably a pretty good sign, but just kind of keeping it in mind in here, these things just on if there is some type of surprise happening here, being mindful of it, right? Again, this is really the primary idea, but I'm just not going to eliminate any of these possibilities with how Bitcoin has behaved. As we defined it last week, right? When you are in a range, especially when you are in retracement ranges, this is the dumb money zone. You really are trying to guess exactly how a range is going to be behaving in here, and they can take various shapes. And it may just end up being something like that happening out of here before we eventually get into an ABC to take place from higher. It's just really a fool's errand to try to guess how the price structure will look in the middle of the range. And I think that's the thing I'm trying to reiterate. Even in a technical crashing structure, right? Normal technical behavior would find a stall here at this range height to then ABC from here. We've just continued marching on beyond that. So I think it's important to just kind of remain humble in humble times. In the event that prices shift up higher, I definitely will be thinking we'll see an ABC. Definitely think we'll see it over here in XRP. But that's what we're really all cheering for right now. And so far, so good. Big picture perspective, like we talked about last week, we saw all the bullish divergences happening down at the lows. Price has ricocheted off of those lows very well. People were asking in markets in the morning if the breadth has opened up. We haven't seen it on the daily time frame yet. We've seen it on the 4-hour and the 8-hour time frame. We're still waiting for it to appear on the 12-hour and the daily time frame. If those do appear, I of course will immediately post about those. Of course, this was kind of a big moment in the market here in the last 24 hours as Monero was able to take out the heights at back there in January. It's really one of the only ones that I know of that has been able to do that so far. Now, of course, Zach XBT over there on X has stated that there was some type of $300 million hack of Bitcoin that was then swapped into Monero, and that's what caused this price pump up there. He doesn't definitively say it is a hack, but that it seems likely that it is. The reality is, from the technical behavior, right, this is the tariff sell-off. Price is able to shift all its way back up to the 702, get through the 786, backtest the 786, it starts coming off of the 786, and then, of course, price happens to do a narrative as we get there to break through the high. So essentially, we worked all our way back up here, all the way through all the retraces, broke through all of them, backtested all of them, and then, a hack happens. I don't know, but if you've known like markets in the morning, we've kind of highlighted what coins have like shown additional strength beyond other coins throughout the market. Monero was one of them. Ones in particular have been like XRP, Stellar Lumens, Bitcoin, SUI, and Monero is listed as one of them. And there's not many, right? There's only like 5 or 6 of them, Monero being one. And then boom, there's the blast through there with the narrative. So this is definitely not a, hey, run and buy Monero type of thing. And we'll see if this story develops at all. But the reality is, we've been watching SUI. SUI has unquestionably done a reversal in there. And here we are a couple of days later, and there's Monero. And one of the topics that was really just kind of brought up in markets in the morning is whether or not we would actually see any type of alpha or get any kind of edge by monitoring anything that is in the market that's really just kind of following along with the rest of the market. A lot of people are like, hey, cover this coin, hey, cover that coin, but it's really just following along with like what Total 3 is doing or Total 2, or they all just kind of look like the same. They're just doing exactly what the market is doing. And it's why I just kind of brought up the idea, like there's a reason why we're like focusing on these ones that have had a little bit more strength, because they've given like clues throughout the past of like things are moving. And 2 of them that have been those leaders have been SUI and been Monero. And so they're, of course, look at that. There are 2 of them that actually are kind of given some type of a signal happening in here. Then at the same time, of course, Bitcoin's always been one of them too. Bitcoin's shifted all the way back up. Now we're kind of waiting on something to come out of XRP. However, XRP obviously above 230. It's clearly gotten above this 223, 225 level now. Waiting for more moves to happen in here, but we're getting more signals happening from these leaders in the market over the past year. So I think we've seen some optimistic things coming. And like you brought this up in the past, right? Sometimes you can get coins that like kind of give you a head start or give you a lead, but you got to kind of be careful with that, because we saw that in 2022, like something like VeChain. I think it was VeChain. It like fired up and it was like, oh, wow, okay, it looks like we're going to be good. But it was just like a false move that happened in there. So really have had to kind of tighten that down and not just look for some random coin that just kind of pops off to give some kind of clue, but like focus on who has historically been leaders here over this past year. How are they doing? Are they giving any signals? And so far, we've seen the moves in Bitcoin, we've seen the moves in SUI, and we've seen the moves in Monero, which have been leaders, or at least shown additional signs of strength beyond what the broader market is doing. And we're getting that early sign of strength from those assets currently right now. So I think that's optimistic, mixed with all the things we talked about over the last couple of weeks when the tariff stuff happened down here at the lows. It was like a mirror image of what the 2022 correction looked like for the crypto market, in particular for Bitcoin, that it took this moment right here for the FTX collapse to happen. And this is where we get our tariff move happening in here, where it's just end of the world stuff, right? And then the market rips to the upside after the news catalyst. And it's just, again, a reiteration of this market and how it is. It's just you drift down to the downside for a long time. You get slammed with just an unbelievable narrative. Prices reverse. The same thing happens to the upside. I would suspect if we end up getting a move happening like this in the market, the story would be the same up in here. There'd be something that would be so incredibly good, so incredibly amazing. It makes it absolutely impossible to consider selling any of your crypto assets because the narrative is so good, just like our narratives tend to be so unbelievably bad at the lows. But certainly we've seen the strength, we've seen things move. Now we're just going to see how much follow through can this week have. One of the reasons why I still just kind of hang my hat on that. I don't think we're going to just break out just yet, and that it's going to end up being some type of corrective stuff. Really just comes from broader markets. So things to kind of pay attention to this week is one, of course, the unpredictable nature of the narratives and how it's an ever evolving story. And I would say day by day, but it's almost like hour by hour, the story changes. 1 minute, it's like the tariffs are going to be removed. The next minute, it's like the tariffs are going to be on for the next 3 years. So that's just kind of chaos. But like things that we will see this week is going to be Apple earnings. Apple's a major contributor to all of the indexes. If this is the peak of Apple, which I suspect that it is, where Apple is right now is really more so just like it's right here, and that there's still another low to come out of here of Apple. And my thoughts are probably that the crypto market's kind of going into a recovery in here to kind of get ready for that type of move to come for something like Apple. And I'm not fully sure that the S&P 500 is going to set a new low because it's already wiped out all the liquidations and all of the stops throughout here. But I am in the belief that we really have already seen the top for Apple, and just being mindful that we're not in something like that for Apple right now, and that there's one more move. And that's what the crypto market's kind of setting itself up for, is that maybe there's still a little bit more to come from the stock market. And then we kind of go into that return to normal phase of markets where you see small and mid caps roar into this, like we did with the crypto market back here in 2021 and like we saw in 2017. So it's kind of why we keep talking about this stuff, that I think there's still this bumpy road ahead, and why I'm not like, hey, we're shifting up in here, we're going to crack through this retracement, we're going to crack through that one, we're going to crack through that, and then we're just going to keep going and going and going. I'm thinking there's like some type of complicated picture to kind of show up in here before we get into that. But like the path on how to get there and what a market would look like and why it would shift into those small and mid caps and crypto and everything like that, it's because we tend to see that happen in these types of environments right in here. And that it kind of has the appearances in the crypto market that we're just kind of setting ourselves up to prepare for something like that. And then as that return to normal phase hits the market, and absolutely nobody believes this is going to end up being the end for Apple and the end for big tech and the stock market for a couple of years, everybody gets caught wrong-footed on it, thinking that it's just going to keep ripping and nobody takes profits throughout all of this stuff. And so this is kind of the idea on what I'm seeing in the market and why I think, we'll stall out in here, because I just don't think the bumpy road is really done over here just yet, but that it is these environments. And now I've got so much trash on here that it's these environments where things can get real nutty. But I could make the argument that where you're at here for Apple is really still just hanging out in here. So, right, it's like, there's the ABC, there's the ABC. You came in just north of the top of the C leg, and there's still another dip to come out of here before it then goes into the Euphoria retrace. And I'm really not sure about the Russell 2000. This thing has been absolutely insane to not be able to get at throughout here. It still holds the lows. It's been stronger than the other indexes, and it even closed above 1950 last week, which was like one of those lines in the sand. We're going to have the monthly close happen here in just 3 days from now or 2 days from now. We'll see how the monthly close happens from here, if this just becomes catalyst driven and it's recovered. But it's definitely a very difficult path to see here for the Russell 2000. So I'm really not sure about this one. Like, I know that the 4.236 is just sits right up in here, and we just have come up just shy of it. But this is certainly complicated, really well beyond things I've seen. Even if it does something like this and just somehow in a retracement of Apple, we get up here and then, you come down here, right? What does this end up becoming? I mean, I can visualize this really large Wyckoff distribution happening over here, taking place over the course of years. We talk a lot less about Wyckoff distribution because we just see it so infrequently, but it's more of like a version of that stretched out on a bigger time frame, right? Where you just kind of get back up to the peak of these ranges a couple of times after going to the bottom of these ranges a couple of times, and then you have your up thrust after distribution. And like, that's just kind of what you would have to have in here, is that this would be the up thrust after distribution over a massive range, being one of these stretched out much bigger. Darken that up, kind of give you a clue, looking more like that, right? And that's what you kind of been working on in here, and that it's been just this massive Wyckoff. And I do not think we have until 2027 at all. But that's the most logical sense I could make out of the structure happening here with the Russell 2000 to explain away why it's just been so different from things we've seen in the past, right? Everybody relying on those 4-year cycles, thinking it's a block reward having thing causing the crypto market to soar, but it's actually been expansions, and how this time has been different, and what could be like the bull case, right? And that would just essentially have to be the argument in a phase like that for Apple and the broader market, which I think it's reasonable. I think it could happen, and it would explain away how something like this could occur. And it's not like you can't do that over the course of years. Like, this is United Health, right? This thing goes to the top of the range and the bottom of the range multiple times, taking 2.5 years to finally do the upthrust after distribution over here. So the market seems to be climbing here in the crypto market. XRP is climbing at 232 to start off the week. Bitcoin's at 95.3. SUI, of course, has gone ahead and pushed itself all the way back up into the retracements, while Monero had already done so and already gotten through the 702, 786, back tested it. And then as we started this new day and here in the middle of the night, boom, right through the high on a narrative, right? But we got all the way there first. So we'll see how real that narrative is, or if one of our stronger coins in the market has given more signal. Otherwise, green day to start off the week. Hopefully we continue that into the week and make this thing nice and simple to read. If we run into any complications, we'll have things to talk about. Otherwise, things are still just marching on track. If you want to keep your eyes on another leader, I personally do not own any BNB, but it has been one of the stronger assets in the market. If we're already seeing signs coming out of SUI and Monero, and if XRP gives us something, pay attention to BNB. I think if BNB starts giving a signal, it as well is a very good sign for the entire crypto market. We talked about this last week when it came to total 3 on how you could do that and pull back down into these levels and not hold above the previous high, specifically showing that type of behavior happening over here for Bitcoin. If that is what is going on over here for BNB, it's again one of those reasons why we're focusing on those leaders in the market rather than focusing on assets that are just kind of following along with the rest of the market, looking for things to give the clues and the signs that things are recovering. So pay attention to this one. Again, I don't own it, but you can't tell me that BNB doing something like that isn't good for the whole market. So I'll definitely have my eyes peeled on that one. So it's been a good couple of weeks, and so far the low has been marked by all the tariff drama. There's likely still to be a bumpy road ahead. There's likely still to be lots of narratives that will shift sentiment back and forth. For me right now, it's just keeping an eye on the bigger picture. It does seem like the low is, and it does still seem like we still have the final phase of this market to come in, just kind of some bumpiness to get there. And then once we get there, everybody is holding hands again, singing Kumbaya, and everybody's friends. Unlike during these times where sentiment is really shook. Yeah, that's it. But all right, that's going to be it for this one, guys. Happy New Week. Happy Green Day. You guys can check out the newsletter over here at blockchainbacker.substack.com. The most recent one has a 42-minute audio recording. There'll be a new one published here in just a couple of days as well, so you get access to all the past ones. So if you sign up now, you can get caught up on all the old ones and this most recent one, and then be ready for the new one released in a couple of days. You can check out bcbacker.com with over 40 videos and 11 hours of content teaching you how to set up your own charts and indicators within TradingView and CoinTrader Pro. There are links within the description of this video to the newsletter at blockchainbacker.substack.com and to bcbacker.com. Otherwise, have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next one. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you are new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice, and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.